We're supposed to make our lives easier. Oh, did you? Oh, there's legitimate.
We'll call the meeting to order for October 4th, 2016, the Wicomico County Council Legislative Session 2016-20. Those that would like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion from council to approve the legislative minutes from September 20th, 2016.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the work session minutes from September 20th on county tax sale.
So move.
Second. Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the open work session minutes from September 20th, 2016, in reference to county roads paving projects.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes approved. Entertain a motion to approve the open work session minutes from September 20th, 2016, in reference to the Salisbury Wicomico Enterprise Zone.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the open work session minutes from September 20th, 2016, in reference to the Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 6.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. So good evening, everybody. We'll start the meeting off with a couple of very good presentations. The first is the Certificate of Appreciation to Charles Echard Jr. and Charles Echard III. This is for a program that they did, and Mark Kilmer will be presenting that. If you're here, go to the podium over there. Thank you very much.
I'm very honored to make this presentation to Charles Echard Jr. and Charles Echard III. I know that there was a pretty large crowd at the Mardella Springs Firehouse on Memorial Day when I know you were there and you were presenting banners to veterans and veterans' families. And I know President Cannon was there. So it's just you go there and you see kind of what the strength of small town America in doing things like this. So thank you for that. So it's we're very honored to be able to recognize you with this certificate of appreciation. This says, the Wicomico County Council would like to express a sincere gratitude to Charles Echard Jr. for his involvement in establishing the Mardella Springs Military Banner Program sponsored by the Westside Historical Society. The Military Banner Program salutes veterans and active members of the military by creating and displaying military banners on the street light poles in Mardella Springs between Memorial Day and Veterans Day over a period of 3 years. Thank you for sharing the idea of the Military Banner Project as a way to honor veterans and active members of the military in our local community. That's signed by the Wicomico County Council. And there's one, the same for Charles Echard III. So thank you so much for what you do. And I understand this is going to be an ongoing project every year. So this is a great tradition to start. So thank you very much for contributing to our county in this way. Thank you very much.
As Mark said, there were close to, I believe, probably 200 to 300 people at the event, and it was a great event in celebration of veterans. And those gentlemen were the one that came forward and decided that the community needed something like that, and they responded. The next The next proclamation we have is for Mr. Chris Eccleston with the Delmarva Veteran Builders. Councilman John Hall will present it. John Hall is a distinguished veteran, so we thought that would be the best individual to present you with the proclamation. What wars, John?
Distinguished veteran might be a stretch. Chris, it's nice to have you up here. Thanks for bringing the group up. I was Vietnam era. Gettysburg, Vietnam era, Gettysburg. Agent Orange was prevalent then.
He's one to speak, isn't he, John?
Yes, it did. But it's not about me tonight. It is about the Delmarva Veteran Builders, and congratulations for how far you've come and the good press that you've got in a short period of time that you've been in operation. So it gives me great pleasure to present this proclamation to Delmarva Veteran Builders. Whereas the Freedom Award is the highest honor bestowed by the U.S. Department of Defense upon America's employers providing exceptional support to their employees serving in the National Guard and Reserve. And whereas the Freedom Award recognizes employers for the formal and informal initiatives they put in place for Guard and Reserve employees and their families, and whereas Delmarva Veteran Builders is a recipient of the 2016 Secretary of Defense Employer Support Freedom Award, and Delmarva Veteran Builders is the region's only commercial construction firm dedicated to bringing employment to the U.S. Veterans Armed Forces, and Wicomico County and the County Council Executive do hereby officially recognize Delmarva Veteran Builders as being honored as a recipient of the 2000 Secretary of Defense Employee Support Freedom Award for its outstanding service to the United States and its veterans, the 4th of October, by the Wicomico County Executive and the Wicomico County Council. Chris, if you would introduce your group, and I hope you have a few words to say. Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, this is Mr. Lee Beecham, a Vice President, and Mr. Daniel Mills, both Army veteran and Air Force veteran. So it's a real privilege to have about a 70% veteran Guard and Reservist workforce right here in Wicomico County. We're extremely proud. I believe we've really become one of the fastest growing construction companies on the shore, and the veteran attitude that we bring to every customer and every project, you know, it really speaks to how fast we've grown and the attitude that we have. And I will say one other thing, that it's an honor to serve. It's an honor to work in Wicomico County. We're really, really proud to be here, and this is a statement that we will say as long as Delmarva Veteran Builders is around. Our headquarters will be in Wicomico County in Salisbury, Maryland. We're really proud to be here, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Hall. I think it's very incredible that a local company, over 2,400 people were nominated, over 2,400 businesses were nominated throughout the country, and only 15 were chosen out of that 2,400. And here we have in Wicomico County, we have one of those 15. So thanks again, gentlemen. Evening, Mr. Kramer.
Good evening, Mr. Cannon, members of the County Council, ladies and gentlemen. The first item for your consideration this evening is act which follows Resolution Number 129, 2016, authorizing the application to the Maryland Department of Commerce to expand the boundaries of the existing Salisbury-Wicomico Enterprise Zone. Here this evening is Ms. Laurie Carter, Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning and Community Development for Salisbury and Wicomico County, Ms. Laura Kortikowski, who is the City of Salisbury Business Development Specialist, and Mr. David Ryan, who's no stranger to any of us here, Executive Director of SWET. I think all the bases will be covered when they come up.
I think first we have a public hearing.
Well, do you not want to introduce the resolution and then have the public hearing?
We certainly could do that. I'm just trying to follow what's on in the order of the agenda. It's a little out of ordinary,
As you
actually.
wish.
But no, if you would, please come forward and we'll discuss.
If it pleases the council, Mr. President, if we could allow the presentation to occur, that would make it more understandable for persons who have many questions.
Well, I understand. That's very good. That's very good. Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody?
Fine.
If you could just, starting from your left, let everybody know who you are for the public. Thanks.
Lori Carter, the Deputy Director for Planning and Zoning.
I'm Laura Korjakowski. I'm the Business Development Specialist for the City of Salisbury.
And Dave Ryan with Salisbury Wicomico Economic Development.
Hey, good to have you here.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter.
The actual public hearing took, notice went into the actual paper on September the 22nd, and it was advertised as such for us to be able to actually consider this. And at this time, I'm going to turn over to Laura, who is the person who's handling the application.
Okay, well, I'll give you guys a little background again. This was something that was brought from, I believe, the president of the airport to the county administrator to include this expansion. I believe we included a map of the expansion area in your materials. If you have any question on the benefits of the enterprise zone or the impact it would have, please just let me know.
Okay. Mr. Ryan, anything you would like to add?
Oh, no, I think it's pretty straight. We just want to make the airport as attractive of an investment as we can.
Yeah, I think this is a really positive move forward. I think it's overdue for the airport without a doubt. Any comments or questions from council members? I know that we had discussed before the industrial area that was started years ago, a small industrial park across the street. What do you think the chances are to be able to try to get that into with the same designation?
I believe Frank McKenzie had said that that area is not in a priority funding area, so it
Right.
could not be included in this particular expansion request
Right.
because it wasn't the PFA. It's considered a comment area, which I think, and Frank, if I'm wrong, just throw something at me.
You want to come over, Frank?
The comment
Yeah.
area.
Yeah,
But
the-
she has
Mr.
the maps also, if you would
Mr.
like to
Cannon,
see those.
the primary issue is that there would need to be an amendment to the county's water and sewer plan to show that area is to be served with public water within the next 10 years. That would then make it eligible to become part of the priority funding area.
And I believe that we have to do that by in April
I don't
next
think
year.
it wouldn't be possible for the county to go through the advertising and public hearing process of amending the water and sewer plan within that time, but we could clearly make it, or have it accomplished by the next window when the Department of Commerce allows amendments to the enterprise zone, and is that November? Is it April and November, Laura?
It's
October.
October.
But we're too late for the October, but we can
can
prepare
apply for it,
for
yes.
April, is
I
that
believe
correct?
April, yeah.
It
April
would be?
15th?
April 15th.
Yes.
Okay, the reason I brought it up is I'm just wondering whether or not that's,
It's feasible,
in the planning,
yes.
because that would be also nice to try to
And
see
that'll
that
be a
move
council
forward.
decision.
Excuse me?
That'll be a council decision.
Okay.
We have been in discussion with the Public Works folks about amending the sewer and water plan to include that business park in our sewer and water plan. So those, while it's in its infancy, those balls are rolling,
Right.
and we hope it could be probably 30 to, or probably 90 days, to get that accomplished, if everything goes smoothly.
Okay.
But it's helpful, and the more attractive we can make the airport, the better marketing can occur in that parcel across from the airport. as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
But
There are some lands on the airport property that are available now for business development. It's owned by the county. So if somebody wanted to participate and put a business there, increase employees, they don't have to wait until this particular part goes. If they want to do the other part, sewer and water plant is one thing. They'd have to put in roads, sewer and water, to make that happen. So
Right.
it's going to be a while before that other part would come to fruition, but at least we can start making things happen that might show some interest and cause us to move a little quicker on.
Anything we can do
Infrastructure.
to facilitate it, and then it would be up to them to try to see how they can move forward with it. What about the incubators, Dave? How does this impact the incubators there?
Well, it would be in the zone, so there's a possibility of there's two facets to the enterprise zone. One's a real property tax credit, and one's a per employee tax credit. So that per employee tax credit could be advantageous to someone locating in within that building.
Are we maxed out with the incubator space and all that? I mean, it's been a long time since
We're getting close to, because fortunately Piedmont Airlines continues to expand its headquarters, and they've eyed that particular space, and we'll yield to their increase in job counts going forward.
How does this play into the airlines once this designation is established? And is there any advantage?
Well, I think from the airline standpoint, the more attractive we can make the airport, the busier we can make the airport, the better off the airlines are going to be. So I think it's attractive. It also gives them an incentive to expand over time as well.
And maybe if a company that comes in that deals strictly with maintenance of aircrafts, possibly? I'm just
Possibly.
curious.
I mean, Piedmont operates its own maintenance base there now, but more activity yields more FAA dollars, and that yields benefit for all of us.
Good. Great. Councilman Dunn?
Frank, the property you're talking about, the county property you made reference to, are there buildings on there already?
No, it's a vacant
Okay.
piece of property right now.
So they would have
It's
to
farmed,
build?
yes.
Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you all very much. If, I guess maybe you can sit until we get through the public hearing process. Sure. There is a question. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for a public hearing, if we could, on Resolution 129, 2016. Anybody that has any comments, please come to the podium there and state your name and express your concerns. Okay, seeing none, that concludes the public hearing. Entertain a motion from council to accept Resolution 129, 2016.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Thank you,
much.
Mr. President.
The next item for County Council's attention is an update, an informal presentation by our Department of Public Works and County Road staff, and we're honored to have with us the esteemed district engineer, Donnie Drewer, from the Maryland State Highway Administration. He will give you the status on the impact of the recent rains on the state highway system in Wicomico County. And we also have David Shipley, the Director of Emergency Services for Wicomico County. So any questions that you have, I think, can be well fielded by the panoply of persons coming up.
Great. Good evening, gentlemen. How are y'all? Donnie, I know Monday morning I was going down Nanticoke Road about 7:30, and you're the last person I expected to see standing out there in the middle of that, but you were there. How was that event?
Well, we had an issue the night before where the repairs that we had done on the dam, the water overflowed the road again. And as it went to the outfall on the opposite side, it washed out the shoulder and a lot of the slopes. But we were able to get a contractor in there that afternoon and repair that section of roadway before the next night we had more rains in a different area.
Right. I drove by and it all looks like it's all back in
Yes.
order, and the stone's been put down and everything.
Yes.
I think it's kind of fortunate maybe that a minimal
Yes.
hazard occurred to sort of show what where the faults might be, right?
Yes, and I think we learned a lesson because, for instance, the hurricane coming this weekend, you know, it would behoove us to go to not only that dam, but other dams and look at opening the floodgates to lower the dam before it starts, rather than wait and it goes over the road. So we got a little education at the same time, free, of course.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Young, how are you?
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, similar to the state, we're definitely paying attention to all our dams, the most recent rain events. We had 3 in question come close to overtopping. The Morris Mill and Colburn Mill are both high hazard dams. We have significant amount of drainage area that comes to those locations. And it was Leonard Mill as well, that when we went to activate the gates, we had electrical issues. So we've worked through those. There's a manual gate to that one as well. And yeah, it comes down to making sure the spillways remain open, making sure that we're keeping an eye on the water level. And one of the things like Donnie had mentioned was pre-hurricane, we could lower the dams down. There's some, I know with some of our dams, we have such a large area coming there that our state contact with dam safety says there's really no point because the amount of water that will come is going to affect the dam whether or not you lower it. So it's, yeah. So the dams were a major priority, but at the same time, and I'll hand it over to Lee, we had several issues with our roadways and washouts involving those. So
Yes. We received somewhere between 75 and 100 calls regarding road issues, probably 25 to 30 washouts and 10 to 15 significant washouts. Many of those we were able to address during the storm to keep them from getting worse by placing large aggregate downstream to prevent more scouring of the downstream side of the road. And in many cases that helped us quite a bit. In some cases, roads that, of course, you know, we only have X amount of people, and by the time we get to them, like Wastegate Road, for instance, we had to close it for a day or so to make some repairs to that road, but it's opened back up again. So we had some pipeline issues. We had some debris that got caught on the downstream side of the pipes, and with the head pressure, it actually, you know, lifted up the first section of pipes. So we have some of that type of work to do now. Of course, now the concern is what's going to happen this weekend, and some of our roads that are in a kind of a vulnerable position, trying to get them back to a point that that they'll be able to handle what we get this weekend, if we get anything. Of course, lowering the dams is something that's almost automatic with what we do with impending, you know, rainfall amounts like, you know, 6 inches or better or greater than that. We're going to lower ponds that we have the ability to lower anyway. So we probably use somewhere around 1,000 tons of material at some of these locations. You know, the guys have been going since it started, and we're just at a point now where we're going back over things and trying to smooth things out from the initial work that we did. Certainly was not expected to have that much rain. You know, I was thinking a few inches of rain, but not, you know, 11 or 12 inches. And certainly certain areas of the county were impacted more than others from, I would say, Hebron East. The east side of the county, the tax ditches there were, you know, you couldn't even tell where the tax ditch was anymore. Just all water. You know, the woods are full of water. Everything's just so much water. So I think overall we're in pretty good shape right now. Nothing that we can't fix at this point. And we'll just make preparations for this weekend now.
Councilman Dodd, did you?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were prepared for Matthew, if you expect anything.
Well, I mean, you know, again, just like Morris Mill, we don't have the ability to lower Morris Mill.
Right.
We can lower Colburn Mill. We can certainly, I mean, Leonard's really fast, and that's why it's kind of a touchy subject with Leonard's, because when that's at this normal pool elevation and we open the gates up on that, we can have fish flopping there in 24 hours, and we certainly don't want to be fish killers. So, you know, we have to be cognizant of that and the ecosystem. So, we did. There's been a third gate on Leonard's that has not been operated in years, and because of how close we came and impacts to the tourism center that we could have had if it did overtop, we made accommodations with some chains and other things to be able to open up that third gate that's been in place. So if we have to, we can get a grate all in there and we can pop that gate up, and that's going to help us. Of course, when we open up something like that and allow that much flow out, we're impacting things downstream of that. So we also have to think about that. But
that's the one I saw you at.
that's the one you saw, I say, yeah. So if there's a few things that we certainly want to address before the storm this weekend, issue on over by Denny's, Autumn Grove Court, where we had the roads blown apart right now. So we want to get that back in place. Some of the branches we have, such as Peggy's Neck, Horse Bridge, Cody Cox, those branches are just, they can't handle these large events. They're natural branches and they're private, and, you know, they're not, it's not like we can maintain them and get in the woods and clean out the branches. So they're low areas, and so they're prone to flooding and heavy rain events like this. So people that live in those areas are susceptible to some flooding like they experience. So we'll take the calls as they come in, and we'll do our best to respond to them and handle the issues that we can.
Mr. Shipley, how are you?
Good. I have the current I'm sorry.
Before he starts, Lee, explain what happened at Canal Woods.
Canal Woods is direct drainage from Colburn Mill Pond as well as Morris Mill Pond. Then you have the water entering that watershed from both Morris Mill and Colburn. Part of Canal Woods was built in a floodplain area, and those lower units, from my understanding, at certain what we call trigger points of Colburn Mill and Morris Mill, they will be flooded, those lower units. And the big bottleneck with that watershed before the water gets to the river is the railroad bridge right alongside of Route 13. So, you know, you have this big pond with all this water that dumps in and goes into Canal Woods, and then it has to go through this little opening of a railroad bridge, and that slows its progress. Of course, then it goes through under 13, and it gets to Camden, which is a spillover dam. It gets to Riverside Drive, Tony Tank, that's a spillover dam, so no real issues there, but it's the water getting through the railroad bridge that slows everything upstream.
Bottlenecks.
Correct.
There's no gates there at the railroad.
At the railroad, and at some point in time, I'm sure that bridge has some age to it, and the railroad probably have to think about replacing it. And I'm sure when they do, they may increase the span on that. I've never had discussions with the railroad on that bridge or what their intentions are, but that is the issue that causes the issue for Canal Woods.
Knowing that it was a floodplain, how did they get approval to build?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
It was very likely, no, it's in the city limits, so it was very likely it got approved before the floodplain ordinance, which I believe went into effect in the 60s. I'm not certain.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
How are you?
I have the current forecast for the storm coming up. This is as of 4 o'clock today. There will be tropical force winds are expected Saturday. Those are 39+ mile-an-hour winds. During the day Saturday, sustained winds will reach 50 to 60 mile per hour with gusts 60 to 75 miles an hour as Matthew passes off our coast, with winds reducing back to less than tropical force winds at around 7 a.m. on Sunday. So we're looking at about a 20-hour wind event that can go from 40 miles an hour up to the sustained winds of 50 to 60 and up to gusts to 60 to 75. What's going to compound, and now the storm is moving about 21 miles an hour when it gets up to where the Chesapeake Bay is. What's compounding is there's going to be another 4 to 8 inches of rain are possible late Friday, lasting through Sunday. This will be problematic because it's going to add rain to the already 9 to 10 inches that we got through the previous storm. One thing that the National Weather Service hasn't really been confident in talking about yet is the coastal flooding, still highly uncertain. That's like your tides with high tide, with the additional tides on top of that. They're not willing to really talk a lot about that until this Thursday, as far as our county is concerned. But they did indicate that it would affect the peak tides on Saturday into Sunday. So we were looking at about 3 high tide cycles that we would have to have some concerns about. So that's what we're looking at coming at us.
And with the ground saturated like it is now, with those wind speeds, trees and things like that will fall much easier. So.
That's true too. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
The Weather Service is really not worried. They weren't really that worried about the tidal flooding. They were worried about the combination of the winds and the rain and the power outages and the trees down, plus the flying debris that's going to cause with those heavy winds.
We may have had a dozen or so trees down during this last event, mainly from water flow and saturation, but the winds weren't anything to really worry about. So we're certainly going to have chainsaws ready and more of a hurricane mode coming up and start planning for that. So it was a whole different game plan for us as far as how we operate.
And from the state perspective, from more regional perspective, we've got Route 12 shut down, as most of you are probably aware.
Right.
I had 4 contractors down there today trying to get a price to do the repairs. We'll have a price on Friday, and I'm expecting it's going to be 3 weeks or more before we get it repaired. What happened in those cases is we had 3 crossroad pipes at this location that were scheduled for replacement anyway, and they failed. The road started washing out. The water started backing up. In fact, it backed up almost into a resident's house. And at that time, we decided that we were going to just cut her loose. So we dug the rest of the road out to let the water loose so that it wouldn't flood out the resident. And we were successful. So now all the water's gone down, and we've got to make the repairs. But the good thing is if we do get this rain and this flooding again, that we've got the road open so the water can run through. And
Right.
we won't be in the middle of reconstruction, put it that way.
Joe?
Yes, good evening, how are you?
Hi.
I know we're here to talk about the rain event, but first I'd like to thank Mr. Drewer for his assistance in getting the traffic light at the 60-foot road in Route 50.
Just takes me a while to
It
understand.
takes everybody a while. That's government, right? Yeah, we had some meetings. I'm sure the people headed to Ocean City's not going to appreciate it, but the folks at Pittsville and certainly the fire department for all the calls they're having out there. So again, thank you. Mr. Drewer, we've had a situation up on Line Road I wanted to ask you about. And you made the comment about this cross pipe failed. And it just had a thought in my mind. I know you talked to the gentleman tonight before the meeting. Do we have any kind of a working relationship with the state of Delaware when we come into a situation like a pipe under a road that we're going to use Line Road, for example, because that's pretty much the only road I guess that affects us. But how do we get something done on the north side of Line Road if we need to have something done?
That's a $64,000 question. I do have a good working relationship with my counterpart in Delaware. Line Road, for example, for those of you who don't know, state line runs down the center line. And back in 1942, someone made a wise decision that we shouldn't plow one side of the road and Delaware plow the other side of the road, that we should split it up. So from the traffic signal, or from Route 13, these are just rough, don't hold me to these figures, but about, say, 6 or 8 miles down Line Road, Delaware maintains. From that point down to Gumboro Road, we maintain. And we maintain both sides, ditches on both sides, whether it's in Maryland or Delaware, we do whatever we need to do. Delaware's supposed to do the same thing. And then we maintain, again, from Route 13 through Delmar, until it takes off into Delaware. And we have had an ongoing battle, it seems, for the residents on the Maryland side of trying to, on large rains like we just had, well, not even that large rain, but just heavy rains, of water backing up into ditches on the Maryland side and just about flooding people out, And I even took and have had, not where these gentlemen live that I talked to tonight, but the ones that are on the lower end. I've had consultants down, and we've done surveys, we've done everything we can trying to figure out how to cure the situation. But what happens is, the water comes down the ditch on the Maryland side, crosses under Line Road to the Delaware side, goes through here and yonder through Delaware into another outfall that comes back and comes through 54 again, Line Road, back into Maryland. And it eventually ends up in Williams Mill Pond or one of those ponds back there. And really, they're not low enough to take care of all that water is what happens. And the water, when you get these heavy rains, that backs up, everything backs up till eventually the water has nowhere to go, so it stays in the ditch. I've even gone as far as making a suggestion that we try, I don't know if it would work or not, but I know I did it at my property, that we take a large auger, like maybe to use for, the line companies use, put poles in, and auger down in the ditch until you get through the clay, fill it up with stone, like you do a drain field. And hopefully the water, it would still back up, but maybe it'd go away quicker, But I'm still trying to convince us to try that. Whether we will or not is another $64,000 question. But what I suggested to these gentlemen, they said that they had talked with Delaware, and Delaware said that they would put a pipe under Line Road if they would pay taxes in a tax ditch. And they're willing to do that, is what they told me. So they're gonna have another conversation with Delaware, include me in on the conversation. And it might be a good idea for the council to write a letter of support or whatever to the Delaware side. With the concerns,
We could
because
include the county executive too on that.
I can speak for Maryland SHA. We take care of our end, Delaware and Maryland side. So, I mean, they can't complain about that, so we shouldn't be complaining about them taking care of our customers either.
Well, it seems that this one ditch is a tax ditch, like you mentioned, and there's some problems having that cleaned out. I looked at it today, and there's a lot of maple trees growing in the bottom of it, so it's been a while since it's been maintained. So maybe through all this
They were telling me
process-
that somebody that lives there wouldn't let them clean it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there was an attorney involved, and,
Maybe in this process, we can work that out too,
Yeah.
so thanks a lot. Weston?
Yes.
You guys did a great job, by the way, trying to keep up with this. I guess my concern is, there's gonna be a lot of repair work to be done, and I don't mean kind of repair work, you bring in a lot of contractors. How's your staffing situation going with, as far as, I know you're talking about having one crew at some time out to do small repairs. Are we still at that level, or?
I'll let Lee go into the details, but yeah, I think right now we have a good grasp
Yeah.
of the issues we have.
During events like this, we're not, the guys aren't cutting grass, they're not doing all the other things that we're doing. We're utilizing, so we're able to run 3 crews, so that's 3 great alls to repair areas like this. When we go into a hurricane situation, we have 5 great alls. We have 5 quadrants of the county, a great all station in those 5, in each of those quadrants, and with a companion dump truck and like a smaller 1-cab dump truck, that we're able to get around those quadrants and address trees as they fall and keep the roads open so emergency personnel can get through. But during times like this, we pull all the grass cutters off, so then you're going to get a phone call about tall grass here in another week or 2 because they're not out cutting grass.
Yeah.
But we're able to run 3 crews and get this work accomplished. So we're fairly comfortable with that. I would like to thank the public too, because they did a tremendous job of letting us know where we had issues at that otherwise we probably wouldn't have known until they became bigger issues. So it was good that I guess they saw it on the news or they heard it somewhere, and they did call if they saw something that didn't look right, which probably also is a hazard if it migrates into the road and it's dark and somebody doesn't see it and falls into a big washout that's 4 feet deep. So they need to be vigilant and let us know, especially this hurricane coming up, the same situations.
They let me know too.
I'm sure. Oh, I know, but you let me know.
So you feel comfortable with the amount of staffing you got? Are you going to be doing any subcontracting work for some of the repairs that needs to be done?
We don't anticipate, and we haven't in the past, to subcontract any work. Of course, when we get into some of the dam work that we need to do, Morris Mill, things of that nature, Those are large projects and they'll be subbed out, but for the most part, you know, all the culvert replacements, all that type of work we do ourselves, so.
Yeah, if we're capable of making repairs in-house, we go with that option. But yeah, like Lee said, we have two dams that hopefully this coming summer, 2017, will have upgraded bridge work. We have some scheduled bridge work as well that we contract out.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the state and county roads division for stepping up to the plate. They were working hard. I rode around and followed up on constituents and checked out the roads, and had a lot of damage out there. And the state and the county, they were working hard, and I caught Lee working too.
You had to be quick to catch me working.
But he was working. I even got it on video if anybody wants to see it. But they did a good job. The 911 center, they took a lot of calls, and they should be commended for that. The local fire departments went out and assisted cutting trees. A lot of trees fell down. And it's something that needs to be addressed. Is there any way to educate the public not to drive through these roads? I know that the fire departments were rescuing 40, 50 per shift stranded motorists that would try to drive through these areas, and they got stranded, and the fire departments responded to rescue them. And it was not just our county. I heard it in the other counties too, but you guys did a tremendous job, everybody.
They gotta move barrels so they can go through.
Oh, yeah, they'll move through it, too. I mean, we got to a point that we ran out of high water signs. We were just about ran out of cones, and at some point in time, you know, the public does need to really watch if it, you know, if it's a low area that floods frequently and they know there's a lot of water, that's one thing. But if they're not sure, it's better just to turn around, because I'm sure there's some total vehicles at this point.
Yes.
From trying to go through it.
I've seen them. Thank you, everybody.
Cody Cox from Morse Road up to Rose Street. Is that privately owned down there?
All of Cody Cox's, except for what goes in front of Billie Jean Jackson, where they've kind of made it into a pond. Cody Cox is a private branch. So in other words, the property owner, the properties run to, of course, it's how they laid it out, but most of the time the adjoining properties run to the center of the branch. There's no easement of maintenance through Cody Cox. It's no different. Cody Cox branch is no different than Peggy Neck branch, or it's no different than Forest Bridge. It's no different than all these other branches in the county. You know, and it is susceptible to flooding when huge events like we just had.
So the cleanup is...
The cleanup, there's areas of Cody Cox that we have attempted to assist in the past, down around maybe Curlow, in that area. Robinson, I believe, there's some areas that we've gone into where we only have a small amount or ability to get in there. It doesn't do a whole lot of impact, because a lot of the problem is from, say, Moore Street heading over towards Delaware Avenue, the Bruce Street area through there, where it's just so overgrown. But, you know, the ability to get in there with equipment, it would be a challenge, and it would take a lot of community involvement and people giving up easements to do that. And if we do it there, we have other branches throughout the county that we would need to address as well.
There's also permitting concerns. A lot of those areas would be considered non-tidal wetlands, and the permitting to impact those can be often considerable in both time and money.
Aren't there ordinances in place, though?
So just let it flood.
Yeah, aren't there ordinances in place, or, you know, some type of restrictions where the property owners are responsible for maintaining the ditches and these branches, as Ernie says? Because if you don't, you know, it's a public hazard.
A lot of it, I believe, falls into, you know, intentionally obstructing the flow of water versus, you know, a tree falling in the branch or something like that. I'm not aware of any regulation or ordinance or law that would require a property owner to do that. I don't know. There may be something that exists, but, you know, even, you know, all of our ditches to a degree are dependent on private ditches. I mean, we may have some ditches that outfall directly into the river or somewhere, but for the most part, a ditch is follow the lay of the land and the topography. So we may have a county ditch that goes through a field ditch that maybe comes back out to another county ditch at some point. So they all need each other to really function properly. So someone way downstream can really impact everyone upstream. Ditches that run through the woods that were, you know, built 50 years ago or more, and they're grown up with trees and they're private. So, you know, it would be good if property owners did maintain the ditches that run through their property because they're there for a reason.
Well, some homeowners associations, they're required to maintain the ditches, and inspectors actually come out and inspect it and say, if you don't do this, you know, they're, you know.
Correct. And so some more formal stormwater requirements are put in place. The HOAs are required, and they have dues through their HOA dues to maintain their stormwater. But that's only to the outfall, so, or to wherever it leads, what their requirements are, and they are inspected by the county and made to keep their stormwater facilities maintained at their expense, at the developer or the residents' expense.
Well, you know, Mr. Druid made the comment that, you know, they had learned a lesson by, you know, the storm coming in and what precautionary measures needed to be taken on his part. Has the county learned of any precautionary measures that we need to put into place to try to make sure that these branches are kept cleaned out, any of these ditches that are not being addressed, such as what Councilman Davis had suggested? We just, it seems foolish to allow it just to continue on and just throw your hands up and say that's just how things are. Anything that you might be able to recommend of
You know,
measures that we could take?
You know, if the county was to invest in maybe a formal drainage study of some of these branches that are, you know, part of a watershed, and then if we invested in a study on those, and someone could do that study and give us recommendations or a plan on how to address long-term, you know, cleanup, or so that they function better, because, you know, these you know, it seemed like a 100-year storm was very few and far in between, and now we're having 500-year storms back to back to back to back. So is this the new normal? I don't know, but they can handle normal rainfalls, but not these big ones that we've been having, that we had in July and now that we've had now. So
You said a study had to be done. I mean, that area has been flooding for years.
I mean, a study in terms of putting everything together of how to actually go about to improve it. In other words, from the permitting to looking into, you know, easements, or whether we're going to say to the property owners, you need to clean up your side of the property in the branch, or exactly how to go about doing that. They may be able to find certain areas of those drainage areas that are more problematic than others with going through the branch or going through private property. So, you know, just because you have flooding right here, it doesn't mean this is where the problem is. The problem could be way downstream of that. So, yeah, I mean, we know where the problems are, but for someone to get all that together and with the permitting and everything else that we need to be involved to fix it, that's going to take some coordination and some planning to do that.
So what would require that to take place?
Well, Weston and I talked about that with, you know, there's engineering firms that specialize in doing those types of studies and looking at that. That's what it would take. I mean, and it would take, again, people being willing to give up some of their property if in fact the county is going to end up being responsible to improve these drainage, these branches. And that's a decision that would need to be made if that's something that we want to take on or not. We have a lot of facilities of our own to maintain that are county facilities, county right-of-way, and we're talking about private drainage or private facilities here, private property.
I guess that's my next question, and I understand it, but I'm wondering where the point is. Where's the point of it's the county's responsibility, and then it becomes the property owners? Say you've got a property along a county road, so you've got a ditch along the county road.
Right.
Then the ditches move into the woodland or the yards.
Correct.
How many feet, at what point do we take responsibility or assume responsibility for those?
Well, all of our roads have a right-of-way, and a lot of our rural roads, maybe it's a 30-foot right-of-way or a 40-foot right-of-way, or in a developed area that's been subdivided, we may have a 50-foot right-of-way. Now, certainly, we're gonna reach into those areas as far as we can reach, and it's certainly gonna be beyond our 30-foot right-of-way. But we don't have the ability or capability to go through a woods ditch with equipment and clean out a woods ditch.
I understand.
So we do the best we can do, and there's been times that we've gone out onto some private property if it's impacting a road with discussions with the landowner, and done something like that if it's impacting us.
Okay.
So, it's more of a case-by-case basis on that, but
So basically, if it's impacting the county road, that's
if it's
when we-
impacting our road and we need to try to work out a solution with the property owner, we're gonna do that.
Okay.
And I think that's a countrywide problem. That's just not a Wicomico
Right.
county.
Yeah.
That's not, we have the same problem Lee's talking about. We keep our ditches clean, but our ditches, they dump somewhere else.
Yeah.
That dump somewhere else, so eventually it gets somewhere else, wherever it's going.
Well, I think
And anything along the way that stops it, it keeps backing up until eventually it gets, we have that problem all the time. And people will call and say, you need to clean your ditch out. Well, what they want you to do is make your ditch deeper. So instead of having 1 foot of water in there, you got 2 foot of water in there. I mean, it's the same thing. The water just doesn't go away. If it doesn't flow away, that's the problem.
I think one of the most, something that a lot of people wouldn't realize in this county, we have a problem with beavers occasionally
Yes, we
backing
do.
up water. I know downstream from where I live, there by Wastegate, there's a colony of beavers. You wouldn't think we'd have that problem, but we do, so.
We do.
Went down Deal Island Road, we had muskrats, and we lose the shoulders.
Yeah.
Muskrats going on the road.
What about Nutria?
You gonna say?
Yeah, I was just going to, for Councilman Davis, we can study that area. We can put out to one of our on-call engineering firms to do a study for quantity and looking at all of that as Lee described in terms of adding the permitting, adding all of that. I think what we would need to do is also prioritize, because there's many areas throughout the county that have flooding issues. More recently, I've been dealing with a part of Dagsboro Road, as well as parts of Pemberton Drive that have significant flooding on rain events. The other thing to consider is that even when we design these structures, there's going to be a rain event that can overtop them or overwhelm them. So the rain we had recently, we have to go back to, is a statistically significant amount of rainfall. So yeah, it does flood historically, but we have several places, and I guess this past week everywhere was flooded. So we need to take that into consideration when we're trying to set our priorities.
12.5 inches of rain is what I gauged in 3 days at my house.
Well,
And
it does
I
let
was
us know
dumping
where
the
our problems
gauge.
are,
I was
too.
dumping the gauge every day, so.
Yeah, well, if we are documenting
Yeah.
where the problems are, and maybe
Yeah.
trying to at least begin developing some type of master plan as to what to address, because it's just similar to what Mr. Drewer said. You could resolve your problems here, but it's not gonna do any good if it's
Right.
jammed up somewhere else. I think a real comprehensive plan would be really nice to see, now that we have seen where some of the faults are.
Yeah, if it's an issue that you have, and this could be the instance with some of these roads, that you have all this water built up on this side of the road, and because of the capacity of the pipe, your water level's down here on this side of the road, and that you could say, okay, we need a larger pipe here in the future. The next time it's replaced or whatever, we need to increase the pipe size. That would make sense. But when you have a road that has a foot of water running across it on this side and a foot of water running across it on this side, it doesn't matter unless we raise the road 3 feet and put a 2 foot larger pipe in, it's just that much water that's overwhelmed everything. So in a lot of these instances where the water was running across the road, it's not so much as the size of the pipe, it's just the volume of water in the either the ditch or the branch that it was in. I mean, I'm talking about woods that were full of water flowing across the road, 1 to 2 feet deep. So I don't know that there's any way to design for that. But in some instances where maybe we could, the next time we replace the pipe, try to go to a larger pipe.
If you have homeowners that are like concerned, they said, they were just absolutely shocked that the water was coming up to their front door, and they're having questions. I had a constituent called me because the front yard and the backyard turned into a pond. So their question is, okay, so this doesn't happen if the storm comes again this weekend. What they're trying to figure out what the resources are, where they can go, because evidently there's a pipe in the backyard that's now full of dirt, and I think they said a few years ago the fire department came and blew it out. And but they're concerned that this pipe is now blocked, and they're also concerned as to whether or not the ditches are properly cleared out. So how do you address that?
Is this a county road?
Yes,
thing?
yeah. It's
Well,
up near
then-
Kaywood
then
Drive.
On North Kaywood Drive.
Kaywood Drive.
Then have them contact our office, and, you know, we've been blowing a lot of pipes out the last few days.
Oh, you have?
And, you know, where we haven't, where water levels have receded, if we're still seeing water on one side of the road, then to me, there's an obvious issue. We're blowing those pipes out. We have one on Naylor Mill Road near Jersey Road intersection. Once the water receded, we still have water on one side of the road. So, whether someone got off the road and had debris at the end of that pipe or whatever, so we blew it out, and in 5 minutes it was all gone. So we do address those if we were made aware of them, but it's better for them to let us know sooner than later. You know, I've had a few calls today that they've had this problem for 30 years, and they really want it taken care of before the hurricane. I just don't know that we're going to get to all these places by then.
Right. Well, that's what their concern was. They just didn't know where to go or who to talk to. They weren't sure of the road, but that's good to know, so they can contact your office.
We do live on the lower shore. That's why they call it that.
I guess just to wrap up, Mr. Drewer, what do you see as your 5 priorities or the top priorities that you know that you have to address? I know you've mentioned Snow Hill Road. Nanticoke Road's already been taken care of almost overnight, but I mean, what do you see as your priorities for people that are kind of wondering what's going to happen in their areas?
As far as Wicomico County is concerned?
Yes.
Well, our number 1 priority right now is to get Route 12 open, of course, but as far as Wicomico County, we had 7 locations, I think, in Wicomico County that have water either across the road or something, and in all cases now it's receded.
Okay.
The only one place that we still need to do it, and I understand it's going to be done tomorrow, is on Colburn Mill Road Bridge. We had a washout on Colburn Mill Road Bridge, and that's going to be fixed tomorrow. And we should be back up to speed. I don't think there's anything else that we're concerned with in Wicomico County. Yeah, Colburn Mill Road Bridge tomorrow.
Okay. Weston?
Well, one of the things that hasn't been touched on is the debris management plan for the county. So while Lee and the Roads Division are working on repairing the various issues we've had and prepping their chainsaws, from the solid waste standpoint, collecting and planning to take large amounts of debris, that's always something that with hurricanes we like to prep for, and in the special case of having extremely saturated soil and high winds potentially coming, we could look to have a large amount of debris that will need proper disposal. So yeah, from a solid waste standpoint, prepping for that, and then you know, Lee's priorities in terms of the roads.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Where are you
Just
going
trying
me
to see what you
Well,
see
we
as
have
your
a
priorities.
few things we want to get done this week before the hurricane. On Colburn Mill Road, I was talking about a piece of furniture or something that was against the end of a pipe. So that's really that's going to be a very vulnerable place for that road to suffer damage from another storm. So we need to get that fixed. That's at the Oakland School Road intersection. We have the issue on Autumn Grove Road where a pipeline had failed under the road there, and that's only one way in and one way out for those residents, so we need to get that addressed. We have we know of a clogged pipeline that we have in an easement that backs up. We're going to work on that tomorrow. You know, we have some things that we want to get done before Friday or Thursday or whenever we start to see, you know, effects of this hurricane that's coming. After that, we're going to go back and have to final fix a lot of these items that what we may have from the hurricane, who knows? You know, whether it be some topsoil and seeding in areas that the shoulders are washed out, or smoothing out or adding stone to what we've already put there from this. So that's kind of our priority right now, moving forward.
Appreciate it. Mr. Shipley, anything you wanted to add?
I'm only trying to continue to educate the public on better prepare themselves for this.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? Council? Gentlemen, we appreciate you coming in because you're on your personal time where you could be home, and well, maybe not. Maybe you have to go back out on the roads. But thank you very much for coming in and helping us and explain it to the public.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Next item for council's consideration is an update on activities at the Humane Society of Wicomico County, and it's also an opportunity for the county council, I think, to have the first time to meet the new executive director of the Humane Society, Mr. Aaron Balsamo.
Good evening, how are you? Thanks for taking the time to be here tonight.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
He's really not new anymore.
No, it's been a few months. March 26th, I do believe, is when I started down at the Humane Society.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Documented by fire too, right?
Exactly. It's the only way to do it. First, I just want to give a little background on myself so everybody knows, who I am, where I came from. After high school, I joined the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for about 9 years. I served primarily as a military working dog handler. Got out, and I worked for a place called the RAND Corporation. It's one of the nonprofit government think tanks. Worked there for some time, moved on to City of Pittsburgh's Animal Care and Control Bureau, and from there I ended up here. Have a associate's degree in criminal justice, and I have my bachelor's in political science with a concentration in international relations. So that's pretty much me and where I come from. Few items on my list. Upcoming legislation from the state that's going to affect the shelter, not in, excuse me, not in a bad way or anything. It's House Bill 494. It's the Animal Shelter Standards Act. Essentially, it's just a transparency bill requiring all shelters in the state to, essentially, you have to post either online or at in a conspicuous place within the building what your intake rates are, your euthanasia rates, all your various rates. A lot of animal activists got in on this bill, and then a lot of shelter directors gave their input, and the state legislature came together and came up with this bill. Once again, it's House Bill 494. Our shelter statistics so far this year, calendar year, we have taken in 2,191 animals. Compared to last year, we took in, all of last year, we took in 2,765. We do have very high intake. The most, the shelter that, most closely resembles us is probably Talbot Humane. And to put it in perspective, their intake numbers in 2015, they took in 389 dogs compared to 974 by us. And they took in 633 cats compared to 1,782 cats by us. So we do have a very large intake at our shelter. Spay and neuter clinic, last fiscal year we had 1,246 spay and neuter, 341 vaccines that people came in to get done. Some of those are shelter animals, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we do have a lot of, it's not just shelter animals, it's public that can come in at lower costs. I do plan on next year getting trying to at least get a grant from the state so people that are on public assistance, whatever type of public assistance it is, they can get their animals spayed or neutered for free under the state program. Animal control stats, last year we took 2,919 calls. So far this year we're at 2,090 calls. Last year we issued 153 citations. This year we have issued 51 so far. And we currently have about 3 cases of state charges for animal neglect that are proceeding right now. There were some, since I've gotten here and really got a chance to study the state and county laws in regards to animals and certain level of standards of care. There were some items that I wanted to give input as to possible future legislation. Some of it comes from when I was in Pittsburgh, and there's a big difference between being in a large metropolitan area as opposed to a county. So I had a look at the laws that I had in Pittsburgh, and not all of it was applicable here. But for instance, shelters, one of the big things we had in Pittsburgh was between November 1st and March 31st, the structure had to have a windbreak at the entrance to prevent cold winds coming in for people that did have their dogs outside for an extended period of time. helps with hypothermia. Hypothermia for a dog, just like a human, can onset very quickly. And then during the summer months, they just had to make sure that the area the dog was in had a place. The shelter had to basically, you couldn't have direct rays of sunlight coming down on the dog. They had to have shade. And then the floor had to be raised at least 3 inches off the ground in case of flash flooding or instances like that. Dog tethering, one of the biggest things that I liked about our tethering law in Pittsburgh was the tether had to be attached to a swiveled object. It couldn't be attached to a tree. The gutter to the side of your house had to be attached to a swivel so the dog could roam. It wouldn't disable its access to freedom. It wouldn't get tangled. We also had standards up to the chain. Even since I've been here, we've had cases where we've gotten out and got dogs and they've been on the thick chow chains that are 3 inches thick. I've seen it done with, the thickest a chain can be is 1/8 of an inch thick, and it can hold a dog fairly well. And the tether also needs to be at least 3 times the length of the dog from the nose of its, from the base of its nose to the base of its tail. Gives the dog, generally speaking, HSUSA, PCA standards, that's a fair amount of room for the dog to be able to move around and access what it needs to be able to get. And also it has to be on some type of a collar, flat collar, not a choke collar, and they can't have the chow chain just wrapped around its neck. The biggest one that I like and that I would like to see here is prohibition of dogs outside in extreme weather. Essentially what I like to see is if a severe weather warning has been issued for Wicomico County by the National Weather Service, no dog may be tethered outside for a period of more than 30 minutes.
Sure.
Yes, thank you so much. My main reasoning for this is even this big rain we had over the weekend, the main call that we were getting was people that were leaving their dogs outside, tethered in the rain, and the waters were coming up. They lived by one of the rivers, or they lived by one of the dams that were overflowing. The waters were coming up, the dog was just swimming and hoping the water wasn't getting any farther. Eventually that dog is going to wear out. He's not going to be able to swim anymore, and there's only one place for him to go, and that's down. And I mean, if I catch these people, I could get them on a health and welfare kind of thing, but there's no actual law against them tethering, leaving the dog outside in extreme weather. So that's one of the biggest things that I would like to see is if there's a severe weather alert by the National Weather Services, if we can enforce it to where people have to bring those dogs inside. The other thing that I would like to see is if the temperature is above, and it's kind of here because there's a lot of people that have hunting dogs that they leave outside all summer long and all winter, and I get it. I've had hunting dogs before that have been primarily outside, but heat stress, heat stroke can onset very quickly, as well as hypothermia. If temperature is above 90 degrees Fahrenheit or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, dogs being restricted to being outside no longer than a period of 30 minutes at a time. That's not saying they can only be outside for 30 minutes a day. It's just saying 30 minutes, bring them back inside for a little bit, let them cool down or warm up, and then they can go back out. It's one that I've seen in place more than just in Pittsburgh. I've talked to other animal control chiefs and directors, not just in Maryland, other states, other contacts I have, and a lot of places have that same law generally.
I've got a question.
You got a question?
Before I forget, because you keep going on about things you'd like to see.
Yep, sorry.
Where does that legislation go? Here? Are we the ones that pass the legislation that he's wishing for?
There are county law or state laws, and on some of this stuff like the severe weather, I don't believe there's any state law on it. So from my interpretation, and granted I am fairly new to Maryland, from my interpretation on it, that gives the freedom to the county to be able to make a law governing that issue because there has been no standard set by the state on that.
Well, if we can do it, can't you write it and give it to us and
I'd
we'll
be more
tweak
than
it?
I'd be more than willing to work on that and get that.
Cold weather is approaching.
Yes.
In the past, we actually established a commission that spent probably 9 months just reviewing all the dog laws, and they came and they completely revamped the entire set of ordinances.
Yeah, and I'd seen when I started that not too long ago, they were completely revamped and.
And even they feel that there's updates and upgrades that need to be done to the work
Definitely.
that they put forth. The funny thing is that at that time, everybody was concerned about protecting citizens' rights from violent dogs, because that
Yes.
happened to be the trend where, you know, the dogs had attacked some children. And
Yeah.
that was the
Now, when it comes
impetus
to
for it.
animal laws and rights, there's always a trend. There's always, you know, like with
We now seem to be going in the opposite direction, where people are becoming more concerned about animals' rights.
yeah, and granted, sometimes some people do take it too far.
Well,
You know, it
it's
goes both
legitimate.
ways, but yeah, it is starting to. It seems like the pendulum's starting to swing the other way. But I mean, you got to have. To me, you got to. It's that line that you got to walk, where you got to be able to protect the animals, but the citizens and the residents of the county still got to be able to have their rights to, you know, be able to do what they need to do.
Joe?
Well, I would suggest, like John said, maybe you could get a committee together, to put some ideas together
Absolutely.
and present it to the executive's office, and they could review it and then send it on to us.
Yes, sir.
About some new things.
Right, so
I see
it's
some
not
things
just-
that you are concerned about, I agree with. I see a few things that bringing them
Yeah.
in under 30 degrees. I've had dogs that wanted to be outside when it got that cold. So
Exactly.
a lot of that has to do on the breed.
Yeah,
breed of
exactly, and
animals,
that's you know, even when I was in Pittsburgh and we had that law, there were times somebody had a husky outside, and huskies are built for that.
The
But in
heat
the
issue-
summer, on the flip side, in the summer, if they had a husky outside for longer than 30 minutes, I was getting on them to bring
We
it
had
in.
an issue on Old Ocean City Road where somebody was leaving a dog tethered with no water. You know, and
Exactly.
I actually had the sheriff's department there one day trying to get the problem resolved.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a fine line one way or the other.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think that committee is a good idea. I'm glad you two brought it up instead of sending one wish at a time. And the way you
Okay.
guys can get together and then brainstorm and come up with.
Maybe we can
Definitely
supply
not.
you with the names of the individuals. You know, anytime I run into some of them even now, they're very anxious too. They're very concerned individuals,
Perfect.
and they'd probably be very willing to help you.
awesome. I'd gladly contact them. And
How about the structure as a whole with the Humane Society? How is everything working out there for you?
it's working out pretty well. You know, not every job's everything you expect when you take it, but you know, and everybody does things to make it their own. But I really started to hit my stride. You know, little baptism by fire when I started, but really started to hit my stride, and I feel comfortable. I love it there.
Good.
We've had a little issue in one of our neighborhoods close by that's with cats that's going to the neighbors' houses. and
Okay.
Causing problems. And I had somebody in the executive's office contact your facility, and they said they didn't deal with cats.
There is no law in the county against free roaming cats.
Well,
All the laws deal with dogs running at large.
That's
so
not-
if a cat's running,
That's not correct.
it's not.
No,
That's
no.
from my
If
interpretation.
You look at 133-12, the bill number 2008-5, allow a domestic animal, and a domestic animal is described in the descriptions of our law as a cat or a dog or a cat, I think the way it's listed, to allow a domestic animal to repeatedly soil, defile, defecate, or commit other nuisance upon any public property, recreation areas, or private property other than the owners. So, that's the way I read it. It might be
And
wrong, but.
is it a cat that somebody owns and it's an outdoor
No, it was
cat, or it's a
basically
stray?
what it was cats. It wasn't a cat. It was somebody that was feeding, I guess there's a word, feral cats.
Yeah, feral cats, yeah.
And these cats are roaming, it's Mount Herman Manor is where it's at.
Okay.
And these cats are roaming, and when we called, you know, the Humane Society called your office, they said, well, that's not something we deal with. So.
Yeah, and typically we don't trap cats, and a lot of that is because the volume of feral cats that are out there, we just don't have the resources and manpower to be able to set the traps and monitor them and pick the cats
I
up.
think the people that were having a problem would probably assist you in those matters.
Okay.
But it is the law, so, I mean,
Yeah, and
we
if
need to
it's,
address it, you know.
I understand. That's something we'll look into now.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Not a problem, sir.
John, did you have a question? No? Larry? Go ahead.
The last thing I had legislation-wise was the kennel licenses, which really came to light. I had people call my office about it after the Pomeranians. There is a state law that says, if you have a minimum of 15 or more unspayed females over the age of 6 kept for the purposes of breeding and selling offspring, you have to have a kennel license, which essentially not many people would qualify under that, because you could have 500 dogs, but if you're not breeding more than 15 of the females, then you don't qualify for needing a kennel license. Comparatively, Worcester County and Somerset County have dropped that down to 5 dogs under their county law. And it's not male, female, it's if you have 5 or more dogs that you use to breed, then you have to get a license. I talked to the assistant chief over at Worcester Animal Control, and they charge, it was $30 for the license, bring in around $380 to $400 every year through it, which isn't a whole lot of income, but part of their paperwork that the residents sign when they get their license, it states that they're giving animal control the ability to go onto the property during reasonable hours to conduct a kennel inspection, which gives them the ability, like with the Pomeranians, it had to be me as the director, the Humane Society, Animal Control, and the Sheriff's Department to go out there. Where this gives them the ability, by having them sign that waiver, it gives the animal control officers in Worcester the ability to go over there during reasonable hours just to check on and make sure everything's okay. Like I said, they don't get a whole lot of income off of it, but it does give them some flexibility with checking on those potential puppy mill places where sometimes people will get the license and think, well, I paid the money, so they're not going to pay attention to me, they're going to ignore me. The counties bordering us, I wasn't able to find anything on Dorchester County. I wasn't able to find anything on them. I don't think they have a specific county kennel license, but Worcester and Somerset do. And then also, along with a lot of the, Worcester and Somerset and a lot of the other counties in the states, in the state that have revised that law, the exemptions are licensed veterinarians, animal control agencies, or nonprofit animal welfare organizations. So that way, those organizations are able to have more than the dogs, and if they have puppies, they have puppies, and it's not a big deal. And then future projects, the biggest thing that I want to see happen to the shelter as far as a project, and it's not it has to happen right now kind of thing, is the back part of the shelter. I don't know how many of you have been to the back side. It's closed off, and then there's an open area in the back with some more kennels back there. And I would like to get that closed in the back, just for the purpose of, if I get it closed in, I can have dogs out there year round, and maybe add some more kennels back there, just because of our high intake numbers that we have. Over the summer, we were so booked, we had to get creative with having dogs back there. We had to get the soaker hoses to run atop the kennels to turn on periodically throughout the day to make sure the dogs were cool and staying cool, because we literally had no room inside the shelter. People were bringing us strays and surrenders, and we were picking up dogs running at large, and finding a place to put them was difficult, but closing that in is going to be able to help us better serve the residents of the county. And that is pretty much my list of items that I came here with, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions from?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you in talking to folks at the Sheriff's Department and citizens and State's Attorney's Office when we had this issue with the dogs down to Eden. You said you stepped up. You were just had arrived, so I guess you weren't expecting that when you first walked in the door.
No, sir,
So,
not at all.
Anyway, they said everything was working well for the situation we were in. So, and I appreciate it if you follow up on the cat issue.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Thank you.
The only thing I had was, someone had mentioned to me a while back that there was a somewhat of a problem, whereas trying to get rabies vaccinations, legitimate rabies vaccinations, that they were being done, the veterinarians were going through that process, but weren't going through the Humane Society for the proper tagging. Is that correct?
There is one vet out there, and I can double check on his name. I want to say it's Dr. Nolte, but I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on that. But there is one vet out there that's not in compliance. We do, most of the vets that I can see, most of the animal hospitals out there are getting their rabies tags and the like, which are their dog licenses from us. They are buying them from us, but there is a vet out there that I was briefed about when I took the job that has been in non-compliance. I guess he's had letters written to him and just wants to give his own tag out. But I can double check on who exactly that is and get back to you on that and the situation revolving that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. Congratulations, and we wish you best of luck. Anything we can do to help you as a council, the executive branch, I'm sure. Feel free to ask. Joe?
I do have another question, just from information purposes.
Yes, sir.
Your coverage as far as your animal control officers out on the road, how do you have that covered now? 24 hours a day, 8 hours a day? Or?
We have 2 animal control officers. They work Monday through Friday, 8 hours throughout the day, and then we have 1 animal control officer that is on call throughout nights, weekends, holidays. So there is 1 animal control officer that is available. If they need assistance, then they can call me or they can call the other animal control officer.
Okay.
So there is 1 available for emergency situations.
So the sheriff's department's not really getting a lot of calls now, other than
No, if they do get
barking
them,
complaints or
yeah,
something
if
like
they
that?
do get calls, they'll call us on them. If it's something like a barking complaint, we will wait till the morning to go out, and we'll just go out first thing in the morning and attend to that call. But if it's an emergency, say there's an aggressive dog running amok in Mardella Springs or something, we'll go out and we'll get the dog. If there's a dog that's in distress, we'll go out and get the dog. So emergency situations is how we treat that that on call, and then any calls that we get that are not emergencies in the morning, we go out and take care of those. But primarily our on-call calls are fielded directly from the Sheriff's Department or State Police.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming in.
Absolutely.
Next item for council's consideration is resolution number 130, 2016. At the request of the county executive, this is the bond resolution. Finance Director, Ms. Leslie Lewis, is here to walk you through it.
All right. Good evening. Entertain a motion to accept Resolution 130, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
The details of the spending can be found on page 4.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer, yes? What were you saying?
I said the details of the spending of the bond proceeds is on page 4.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Where would you like to start?
Standard bond resolution.
Yeah, right.
It's the one you see every year.
Yes.
Just to give you the timeline, we intend to be, or we're scheduled to be in front of the credit rating agencies
19th
the
and 20th.
19th and 20th. And then the bond sale will be
November 1st.
November 1st. So we'll be a week before the presidential election, and we did that by design. We felt it probably had a more stabilized market at that point in time. In terms of the bond resolution itself, it's the boilerplate resolution that you see every year. The borrowing is what had been laid out in the CIP that was approved this year. So,
Just
Yes, ma'am.
one question on that. I
Yes.
see the Board of Elections building is on there to borrow money to pay for it. We've already bought one, so can you go
yeah,
through
right,
that?
we forward funded that. Recall that we forward funded that. So when we borrow the money, then we'll pay back the general fund for the forward funding. We're meeting out on site with Board of Election officials tomorrow morning to walk through proposed renovations that will take place after the election is held. We really can't do anything on the interior right now, but we are proceeding with exterior improvements. So we'll pay that $500-some thousand back after the borrowing is made.
You said November 1st?
November 1st, yes.
Is that the day where you get on the phone and you go through the numbers and try to
Yes.
find the lowest bid, and then you come back to
And
the
then we come
council?
Back to the
upstairs.
council, it's your
Okay,
meeting.
so is it going to be necessary for us to hold our meeting earlier, because I believe that's an evening meeting?
John, typically in the past, that has occurred at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
We will,
Council had already agreed that, it is an evening meeting, but the council already agreed that you would come in at the time specified to approve the bids.
Okay, just,
it's typically around 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
okay, I have to put that on. I don't know if I put that on the calendar.
John?
That's Rich.
No, that's it. Yeah. Is there any opportunity for redoing any refinancing on any other bonds, or doesn't that come into play here?
We looked at that, Joe, the very, very minimal savings, I think on the order of 129,000. And once you go through the transaction costs, you're really not saving a lot of money. There are 2 series of bonds out there called BAB bonds. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not that familiar with them. None have been refunded in Maryland as of yet. So frankly, we didn't want to be the guinea pig. In the event that we could refund those bonds without tax consequences to the holders of those bonds, and that's where the rub is, there would be a potential savings based on current market rates of close to $900,000. So we're watching that carefully, but we would have to come back and do a subsequent refunding once we get clarity as to whether or not there's an impact on the holders of those bonds. And when we met last, we figured that that potential refunding would probably not take place until spring, April.
Are rates trending higher or lower than last year? Is there any way to tell at this point?
We talked with our advisors, and we are anticipating that the rates on 15-year money will probably be in the same neighborhood that we experienced last year. Shorter-term money, rates are about 1.5%, but that's for like 8 to 10-year money. So when you get into 15, 20-year money, you're still at about 2.25% right now.
We were reading about the city getting a real low rate. What was?
That was because it was short-term borrowing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was between 8 and 10-year borrowing as opposed to long-term borrowing. So you're going to get a better interest rate.
Okay.
Because your risk profile is less.
What is the systemic renovation that's being done at Wicomico? I know they're working on it now. They've opened the fence up and they have work trucks in there.
The systemic renovation at Wicomico, I believe, Larry, don't quote me on this, I'll have to go back to the CIP, but I believe it has to do with heating and air conditioning.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
It wasn't listed with the rest of them. There was another question, I can't find it, November 15th. What was that? Was that like the deadline that, is that when the county executive can authorize?
That would be the settlement on the
November
purchases.
15th is the
So we
settlement.
approved the bid at the meeting on the 1st, and then settlement and funding is on the 15th.
Okay, that's what it is.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 130, 2016, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, resolution passes.
Quick way
Thank
to
you very much.
Spend $20 million, right?
Huh?
Quick way to spend
20 million here,
20,300,000.
Thank you.
Will you send out a reminder for everybody at the time?
Yeah, no kidding. Laura, we'll have a reminder go out on November 1st. Sure. 2 o'clock, I guess they're anticipating somewhere in the 2 o'clock range right now, but if you could, that'd be great.
We have a night meeting then?
Yes.
And
So-
you want us to come in at 2 o'clock?
That would be the program.
Would you?
You're not getting overtime. They're gonna pay you overtime.
Should we switch the meeting times?
No.
It will probably be around 2 o'clock. We'll know better as it gets a little closer.
Okay.
No.
Mr. President, before we go on any further, I neglected to make mention of a change in the agenda for anyone who may be here for the open work session after the legislative session. Tonight, you were going to have a review of Comprehensive Plan Chapter 7. Mr. Keith Hall is ill and not able to be here tonight, so that will be rescheduled. However, Mr. Lennox will discuss with you the town transitional zones issue.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
And then moving on, our next item for your consideration is just nothing new at all, and nothing that will require any action by the council, but it's more as a reminder to the public that at the general election, there will be questions on the ballot. Question 1 is a constitutional amendment, has nothing to do with the county government, but it will, if it is passed, it will require that the filling of a vacancy for either the comptroller or the attorney general to be done by a special exception. Do you want me or her? Okay.
Sorry.
As far as the local issues are concerned, you have question A, a local referendum from the General Assembly, Chapter 169, 2016, pertains to the Wicomico County Board of Education election and appointment of members. Council members will recall the process which you went through last year, holding public forums in 4 different locations throughout the county in order to get public input on the public's views as to the manner in which the selection of Board of Education members should occur. From that process, the council developed a program which would provide 3 options for voters to choose from. And that would be a part of question A, as on the local referendum. The members of the Wicomico County Board of Education, of course, are currently chosen by the governor, and the referendum presents 3 options on how the 7 members of the Board of Education should be chosen. Option 1, and this is how it will be listed as a ballot question. Option 1, retain the current appointed board system in which the governor appoints the members of the board. Option 2 would be changed to an elected board with 5 members elected by voters within the voters' council district and 2 at-large members elected by all voters of Wicomico County. And option 3, change to a combination of members who are elected and who are appointed, with 5 members elected by voters within the voters' council district and 2 members appointed by the Wicomico County Council from a list of nominees proposed by a school board nominating commission. So the ballot question will have 3 choices. The first choice would be retain the current system, a Board of Education with 7 members appointed by the governor. The second option would be for a Board of Education with 5 members elected by district and 2 members elected at large. And 3, the third option, for a Board of Education with 5 members elected by districts and 2 members appointed by the county council. Voters would select one of the 3 choices.
So it comes down to 1 appointed, 2 fully elected, 3 what they call hybrid.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Well,
Mr.
actually, 1 is retain the present system as in
Right,
the order on the
retain the
ballot.
appointed system, yes.
Which is appointed.
Thank you.
Question B begins a list of charter amendment proposals. The first is county council vacancies, a special election, and this would be to amend the charter to require a special election to fill a county council vacancy if an appointment to fill a vacancy in the council is made more than 30 days prior to the filing deadline for the primary for President of the United States. The person appointed will fill the vacancy and shall serve until the first Tuesday in December following the general election for President of the United States, and then there would be a special election to fill that seat. And the choices the voters would have would be for the charter amendment or against the charter amendment. Question C, as it will appear on the ballot, submission of appointments for confirmation to amend the charter to extend the time for the council to act to confirm or reject any appointment by the county executive of the director of administration the head of a department in the executive branch or a member of a board or commission from 30 days to 45 days, and to require submission at a legislative session of the council. The current charter only allows 30 days, and the nominations are submitted to the council administrator. The reason for the expansion to from 30 to 45 days, it depends on the calendar. If it would occur right after a council meeting, the council might only have 10 or 12 days to before he would have to make a decision. So this increases the time from 30 to 45 days, and would have the submission of the nominees to or appointees to at a legislative session of the council. Question D, county executive vacancy, special election. This would amend the charter to require a special election for county executive if a vacancy occurs within the first 12 months of a term, and providing for an interim appointee before the special election. If a vacancy occurs after the first 12 months of a term, then the county council is authorized to permanently fill the vacancy by a majority vote within 45 days after the vacancy. And of course, voter choice is for or against the amendment. Question E pertains to the temporary absence or disability of the county executive, to direct that the director of administration shall perform the duties of county executive in the event of a temporary absence or disability of the county executive. This amendment would have removed the county executive's present option to designate in writing some other person in the executive branch to perform the duties of the county executive in the event of a temporary absence or disability of the county executive. The question is for or against the amendment. Question F, temporary administrative appointments. To amend the county charter to limit the term of an appointment as an acting director of administration or any acting head of a department head to a period of 90 days, and providing that the council may extend the appointment every 90 days. The current charter limits the temporary appointment by the county executive of an acting director of administration or an acting head of a department only if the person does not possess all the qualifications of office as required by the charter. The choice, again, is for or against the amendment. Question G, resolution, these are all done by Resolution 101 of the 2016 by the County Council, which would place these on the ballot. And this question G is for reorganization, definition or defined reorganization. To amend the county charter to provide that a reorganization includes any change of functions, responsibilities, or powers of any part of the executive branch, or a management-initiated rearrangement of reporting relationships, including terms of financial compensation of multiple positions within or between executive departments, offices, or agencies, for or against. Question H pertains to the Department of Law. To amend the charter to change the role of the county attorney in a representation of the county council and the council's right to employ counsel. The current charter requires the county attorney be the legal advisor of the council, and the charter amendment modifies that requirement, for or against. Question I, personnel system, would amend the charter to authorize the county council to establish by law a personnel system and to provide that the county executive may propose changes or revisions for adoption by the council, for or against. And finally, question J, expense budget. To amend the charter to provide that in the event the county council and county executive do not agree upon the expenditure of a surplus resulting from the council's decreasing or deleting budget items, the surplus will be placed in the undesignated fund balance, for or against.
Mr. Kramer, thank you for that review. I think it's very important to the public that they understand very clearly what their options are, especially on these two matters. So the council wouldn't put them forward and gone to the extent that they did to have these on the ballot if we didn't think that all these issues were of importance to the public as a whole. And as part of what you've done tonight is, of course, an effort on the part of the council to educate the public on both subjects so that when they go to the polls, they'll be knowledgeable as to what the options are and how they might like to vote. So I appreciate the very succinct synopsis.
I could add just a couple of things. If anyone wants to reread all of this, it is posted on the county website. And it may be noteworthy that many of these proposals were recommended by the Charter Review Committee that was put forth. How long ago was that, Mr. Kilmer?
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years ago. Both Mr. Kilmer and Mr. Cannon were members of that Charter Review Committee. Mr. Joe Holloway was, I believe, was a member for
No,
a time.
I just attended the meetings.
You attended, that's
Yeah,
right. You
yeah,
and
as
you
a
and
council person.
You and Mr. Culver attended almost all of the Charter Review Committee member meetings, as I recall.
You know, can I say something?
Certainly,
Yeah.
go ahead, Joe.
There's been some accusations made that the council's trying to micromanage. And these ideas didn't all come from the council. There was public input into them. And I don't feel that we are, but I do say that we know the differences between the executive and the legislative branch. And I think at every election that the county executive and the legislative branch should look over the charter and see if there's any changes that need to be made. It's just part of our government and the way it works. So
It's true, Joe. I mean, it's very new for Wicomico County, this whole process. And as you see adjustments that we feel need to be made, it is important for everyone to review those options and to put forward, whatever recommendations we think can only make the county run more efficiently. Mr. Kramer you had commented on the fact that there is a link online at the county's webpage, so that anyone that is interested in this can actually link straight from the county webpage to get this information. In addition, we are working with the newspaper to try to get this promoted in the newspaper. I had a discussion with Greg Bass today from the Independent, and I know that he's also planning to put information out so that the public will be better educated on both of these topics. So.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you again. We appreciate that. Mr. Lennox?
You're up.
I think you're up. First things first, I'm going to have to, yeah, I know, you're right. I know. At this point, I'd like to open the floor for public comments. If you have any comments that you'd like to make, Dr. Boyd, how are you? Come to the podium, state your name and your comments. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Good evening.
Good evening.
If you notice, Mrs. Ashante isn't here tonight, and I'm her replacement.
She will?
I think so. She called and indicated she would not be able to make tonight's meeting and asked me if I would stand in for her.
Glad to have you here.
Big shoes to fill.
Thank you, and thank you all for your service to the county. As Mr. Kramer was going through that list of questions on the ballot, I was certainly not aware of all of the charter amendments that you mentioned, and certainly I would encourage that, you do all you can to educate us as citizens so we can understand what those amendments are and then try and cast an informed vote. With regards to the question on the Board of Education, well, that one is one that we've spent some time talking about, and you've gone through a process. And it's one of the things that it has concerned me for some time, and obviously having served on the Board of Education, especially now where we have a brand new superintendent, who Dr. Hanlon, and she's sort of just getting started. And depending on how this question is answered, it certainly could be disruptive to the school system in the sense that in 2018, in case we move to an elected board in any form or another, there's a chance that all 7 members of the Board of Education could change. So she could actually end up with a brand new board with no members with experience. That's the worst-case scenario. But we do want to at least the public should be aware that depending on how this comes out, it certainly could be disruptive to the school system. Other than that, I certainly appreciate your time, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Any other public comments? Good evening, Mr. Palmer. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Not many of us here tonight, is
The crowd thinned out a little bit.
Good evening, my name's John Palmer. I live on Star Road in Del Mar. I came here tonight expecting to hear about the impact fee that you're going to be voting on, but I understand now that it's been pulled and you're going to wait for some more information before you bring it up again.
No, it hasn't been pulled.
Wasn't it scheduled for tonight? I might have missed that.
No.
The public hearing's October the 18th.
Ah,
Public hearing is October 18th
At the next meeting.
at the next meeting.
and that's going to be during the day?
Yes.
That's probably why I remember to be here tonight. I'm not going to be here during the day.
It could not have been held this evening because there was
Yeah.
not enough time for the required advertising.
Well, the comments that I would like to make on the 18th, I'll just make them tonight. And I just want to let you know that I do support getting rid of those impact fees. I never could understand why we would go out and advertise for people to come to our county and then say, come build in our county, and by the way, it's going to cost you another $5,000 to come here to stay with us. To me, that just didn't make sense. It's kind of like me leaving here, going down to Red Lobster, getting at the door, and they say, welcome to Red Lobster, and oh, by the way, it's going to cost you another $5 coming here and eat our shrimp. I personally would just turn right around and go over to the Olive Garden where they don't charge anything. And I kind of believe that these impact fees could be doing that to some people who really want to come to Wicomico County. And I was never comfortable with tracking the money. I just can't seem to find where it goes from being collected and how it's actually getting out to the school system itself. It seems like it all goes into the general fund, and then the county executive decides how he wants to present it in the budget. And I never did like that part. It reminds me of the lottery. If you remember when the lottery came about, it was going to be the savior of the school system, and the money went into the general fund, and I don't think it all made it out to the school system, so I didn't like it that much. And it's the same thing going on right now with the gambling systems that we have. Again, it's the savior of the school system. It's all supposed to go into the school system, but it gets into the general fund, and I don't think it's all going to the school system. So if there was a better way that something could be done to where it could be guaranteed to go to the school system to help out the kids, I would really like to see somebody come up with something like that. But I do support doing away with the one that we have right now. I will mention about the school referendum, and I'm doing this just as a citizen because I've worked with it for a long time, trying to get it before the citizens. As I look around the county council right now, I see 7 members who were elected by the people of Wicomico County. I think we got 7 real good members on our county council, and I trust the people to do that. I think if we went to a fully elected school board that modeled the county council the way they're elected, I trust the people to be knowledgeable enough to elect 7 good people. So it was up to me as a citizen. I like to see people vote question A, option 2. It's easy to remember. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any other public comments? Seeing none, that concludes public comments. Council comments. Councilman Dodd?
I don't know if you had a special order, it doesn't matter. I do want to thank everyone that showed up to the Wicomico Bridge dedication on Saturday, the 25th, for former Councilman Ed Taylor. He was so excited. I think he lived for that day. It meant a lot to him, so everybody that showed up, council members, delegates, former council members, friends, family, it was a big day in his life, so thank you, everybody that showed up that day.
Thank you, Councilman Dodd. Councilman Holloway?
Oh, yes. We lost a former county councilman this past weekend. Bill Carey, who served in the early 1990s. He passed away. Bill was quite a character. I enjoyed him. He retired out of banking and took on a part-time job of buying a RV business, and which has grown greatly over the past 25 years. He was 83, and I always enjoyed stopping by and talking to Bill, and he did us well when he was on the council, so I just want to offer my condolences to his family. I went to the services today, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Any other council comments? Saying presidential comments, yeah, I would like to send congratulations to Mr. Taylor as well. It was a really nice function that day. Councilman Dodd, you did an excellent job as sort of the impromptu host for everybody. And you really did. It was a very enjoyable event.
Thank you.
And the whole idea of dedicating the bridge, I think, is great, considering his service to the community. That being said, we can now go to Mr. Lennox, entertain a motion to adjourn so that we can go into an open work session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned. Is everybody okay to continue on? All right? All right.
I'll sit down. Sit down.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Cannon.
We'll have you out of here by 8.
Hope so.
I will gladly cooperate, Mr. Cannon. No, please, if we're still being broadcast, we send our best wishes to Keith. I suspect that he's tuned in and watching closely.
Hello, Keith.
Hi, Keith.
So we can't talk about
Oh, heck yeah. If he's sick, I wish him well.
Yes, he is. Keith was prepared, as he always is, on that second issue, and he asked that he would like dearly to be here when we have that discussion. So I appreciate you going along with his request.
Chapter 7 is important.
That's true.
It's a big request.
Mr. Cannon, I could just open this question because I know that there have been a number of topics that have come to mind with the council of late regarding town transition areas. If I could prompt a couple of thoughts on this, I'd be happy to. I can share with you, first of all, I always defer at this point to the zoning map, and I can distribute that for you.
Thank you.
It might be a little bit easier. I'll keep one, and I know I have enough for everyone going to your left and right. This is obviously the adopted zoning map for the county. It's one you're very familiar with. And we always have an issue with terminology, and having just come through the poultry discussion, it was interesting.
Entertaining.
I won't.
Everybody good?
Everybody has it. Okay, great. I'll recall that as we were discussing some of the draft legislation, we were using planning terminology and then ultimately landed in zoning. And it's always important to keep this in mind because when you have a concept and an idea that's floated out in the community with your constituents, with all the folks and issues you're trying to balance, somewhere in the back, we always have to think about regulation. Now, and up until just a few years ago, by virtue of the name of my department, planning and zoning, you did the plan, and then it followed up with regulation. We have examples in some other communities on the Lower Shore where they got through extensive planning process and then couldn't adopt zoning to put it into effect. So one of the things that we're committed to you as behalf of the staff and also the commission is to try to keep those two things in mind constantly, but understand that you're going from the more general down to a more specific as you get down to the nitty-gritty details, poultry being a great example. What's become more complicated over time is that the implementation measures for the comp plan are not just zoning anymore. And it's not just subdivision, different section of the code, but that's one of the examples too of how you implement your comp plan. But the state has gifted you with a couple of other things that then tend to just throw it all up in the air and you go, yes, but how does that involve tier maps? How does that involve priority preservation areas? And it all is interconnected, and we try to keep those considerations on the table all at once. Remember, though, that we don't just start from scratch when you do the comp plan. That, just as in our own lives, we build upon our experiences. We've been doing this now for 50, 60, almost 70 years in terms of adopted comp plans. We have commitments made to property owners, both how they can use their property and certain things that won't happen next to their property. And so we constantly build on that. Not that you never make changes, but that we build on that and we respect that past. So it's important for you to understand when we're talking about town transition areas that each of our communities, and I think we have 8 of them in terms of municipalities, we also have something in our planning called rural villages. And coincidentally, we have 8 of those as well. When we talk about town transition areas, over time that has meant different things. And you can think of it even today as sort of a generic term. How the town grows, or how development around the towns transition out to the rural areas. Both of those perceptions are valid, and we also have to regularly kind of break that discussion down a bit. One of the things that's happened over the years, and I'll start as recently as 1998, that was the last adopted comp plan, with the exception of some changes in the interim. The municipalities didn't have defined growth plans of their own. And I know at times some of the state mandates, we can take our shots, but one of the things that became actually very helpful was to force the cities and towns to look at their own growth, not just on a land use standpoint, but on a supply and demand and relative to provision of services and facilities. And an interesting thing happened when these municipalities went through that process, where they used to say, draw a nice shape around the town, or go to a physical boundary. When they went back and calculated what that meant, oftentimes they said, well, we don't want that many people. We don't want that much commercial activity. We don't want that much traffic and the other impacts that come with it. So we found that since '98, when the comp plan, the land use plan was done that started to define town transition areas, some of the towns came back later, if not all of the towns, and said, we don't want to go that far. So their own growth plans do not reach out into the entirety of the areas that show on the county zoning map as town transitional, and those being the ones that jump out at you in green.
So the town transitional, who laid that out to begin with, the county or the towns? The county.
The county did, and it was with the cooperation of the towns, but there was a man named Pete Johnston, who did a number of the comp plans back in the 90s. There was actually some state money available, and this is before my time, so I'm just repeating history as it's been told to me. They did a contract with the communities, and actually worked on the county comp plan as well. And again, at the time, it was a largely land use plans. So those growth areas shown, around Mardella Springs, around Hebron, those were ones that the community participated in, but were not done with the detail that they are today. We're not related to water and sewer. We're not related to population growth. So fast forward a decade, and the communities then, because of that state mandate, did the calculations, and their growth areas are smaller. So what we're left with is a question: does that mean the town transition areas should be smaller? Well, if your only goal is to have folks live in municipalities, then that would lead you to say, yes, just follow the local plan. We certainly don't want to contradict the local plan, and we've incorporated those individual growth areas into ours, but the town transition areas remain larger. So if you don't go with the premise that only growth should occur in cities and towns, then we have county growth areas in addition to the areas that the cities and towns are committed to grow into over the next 20, 25, 30 years. So we're left with the town transition areas that are larger. The Planning Commission, in doing their recommendation to you, defaulted to this plan. And I'll mention a couple of little deviations, but not little, significant deviations. Their default was to not go through down zoning. Their default was not to present a plan to you that would take away significant development rights from private property owners. So they followed in the comprehensive plan, that big draft plan you have, and you're going through chapter by chapter, they have defaulted essentially to the adopted zoning from 2004. So comp plan in 1998 followed immediately by changes in the ag district, because that was the big issue out there for you. That's when you got the 1 per 15 acres, 1 per 3 cluster. That came in right away. The general rewrite of the zoning code and zoning map, because the zoning is the map and the text, took place over the next few years. So 2004, brand new zoning code and a zoning map. The map follows pretty closely the comp plan from '98. But I'll tell you, the process got a little bit adventurous at that point as well. The state mandates were not as specific, and a committee consisting of over 20 citizens and agencies made some changes. The one you hear about most is the one between Willards and Pittsville. What had been a town transition area, to use that word, for each town grew together. That's a significant difference. But again, it's not the only town transition area. You can see that they take place around the cities and towns, and Delmar, east and west, has a rather significant area. Delmar's comprehensive plan does not show them growing into those areas. But again, growth areas outside of the town plans.
Does Willards and Pittsville show they're growing?
They do not. Oh, I'm sorry. Willards does not.
Right. Pittsville doesn't have one.
Pittsville does not have a plan. And I'll just state it factually. Pittsville has chosen not to participate. The state has worked with them. They've tried to work with them in terms of updating the comp plan, and this is now just short of 10 years that this mandate's been on the table. Pittsville is, by virtue of that, prohibited from annexation, and I believe from zone changes outside of what they have on the table already. There may be some modifications.
Is there a good reason why they haven't?
From
their point?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not that I've heard. It's also particularly for them an issue with water and sewer because, you know, how do you amend the water and sewer plan if you don't have a comp plan, if you don't have your growth area? That's been an issue. So when we discuss town transition areas, again, you've got properties that the towns have, and I'll use the term loosely, put a claim in on it and said, yeah, that's where we want to go. And you know, when we do that, you're going to see that as well in the water and sewer plan. So you have the areas outside of municipalities, and one last factor I'll put in, because this gets confusing as well, is the rural villages. Those are not town transition areas, although the green on this map is very close.
Right.
It was determined that the ag areas should be ag. We allow ag-related uses out in the ag areas, which on this map are the blank, are the white areas. But we know that there's going to be a need for certain convenience services. There are traditional settlements. I mean, Whitehaven, Quantico are two historic districts. Allen, I mean, we know that's a place. We want to recognize it. Parsonsburg. So there's a zoning called Village District, which allows for an inn, it allows for convenience commercial, allows for some office space, sort of low intensity uses of convenience for that rural area. Powellville, as you can see, is one of our largest, which is ironic that it's one of the least populated now.
It's also, when I'm looking at this green area, there's a good part of that could never have anything built on it because it's swamp, you know, it's wetlands.
Sure, an area like that would certainly require package treatment plants.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, well, that and plus, you know, I guess somebody at some point in time just almost drew a circle around it, you know.
That one, we had considerable, and I was here for this part, had considerable input from
One landowner.
Prominent citizens.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, and that was frankly, there were arrangements reached for that zoning map. There were compromises made on both sides. And not that we're here to tell stories all night, but I remember going into the public hearing on this thinking that everybody was in agreement and the room was packed. And I was shocked. This was over at the Civic Center in Flanders. And I thought something had happened. And they got to the public hearing, and there was hardly a peep. Everybody was in the room to keep an eye on each other.
What?
To keep an eye on each other.
So are you suggesting, Jack, that in our process here that we reduce these town transitional areas?
I am not recommending that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that as Keith walks through the land use elements with you, if there are areas that you would like us to look at in particular, we will do that. That line could change. There are some changes out in Mardella Springs area. There was an issue a few years ago where a subdivision was proposed and involved critical area and just got to be sort of a mess where everybody goes, no, it shouldn't be in there. Well, if we know certain property shouldn't be in there, we should take it out. If property owners don't want to be in there, you know, you should closely consider taking them out. But other than that, if we want to allow for growth outside of the cities and towns, I think we stick pretty close to the deal that was made.
Well, I would think, I mean, there's so many times where, you know, the county wants its autonomy from the state. I would think that maybe the municipalities and the towns would want their autonomy from the county. I mean, if they have gone through the process of comprehensive plans and have established their growth areas,
Yes.
isn't that, aren't we somewhat obligated to incorporate that in our comprehensive plan?
We have been respectful of their desired growth areas and have incorporated those. I'm saying there are growth areas beyond those that remain.
And of course, now you have individuals who are in that area who would scream bloody murder if we tried to take them out of the town transitional. Is that correct?
There are people who bought property
Right.
in there and have, paid their property taxes accordingly with the understanding that they could use that in the future for more than what we allow in the ag district.
So what's the gain or loss for someone? Because, I mean, if we ever are going to get involved in this process, I think we need to know what the gains and losses are of individuals who are in town transitionals and then taken out, or vice versa.
I think you're looking at advantages of being, if you take them town transitional, it's simply a growth area. A town transitional is not a commercial growth area. It's largely residential. So you're looking at higher density residential, potentially.
If they're in that area.
Correct. In the alternative, taking them out would put it into the ag district. When you're in the ag district, you would have the benefit of perhaps, a lower assessment based on the fewer uses you could do. Poultry houses, you've gone back and forth on. The areas around Salisbury, and you saw them in what had previously been a yellow map, I think. But in this, the growth areas around Salisbury have been pretty much defined through the years. These are where areas for future commercial, future industrial, future residential. The ones east and west, north by Delmar is much less defined. Your town transitional pretty much is a residential district. Those town transition areas function like an R20, 20,000 square foot lots, an R20 county residential district. It's similar to Homestead, is a good example. Homestead is R20.
Kind of caught between a rock and a hard place in reference to what was touched on with poultry houses, because there was a request to eliminate poultry houses from the town transitional areas, and of course the first response on a lot of people was, oh my gosh, those are huge areas.
Yes.
Realistically.
Yes.
And that's really going to compromise.
Still an ag area.
Yeah. The other thing that complicated that discussion was that we had always held an understanding from the state that if you were in a designated growth area, you cannot apply for MELC funds. We've seen a change, that they're saying that does not preclude you from getting MELC funds. Now, whatever the ranking system is that the MELC board or commission uses, and that varies from time to time, it still is a competitive basis. And how this falls in a priority preservation area, with capital letters, or not, probably matters and will matter in their ranking. But if we wrote a letter very specifically to MELF right now and said, am I precluded from getting a MELF easement if I'm in a designated growth area, the answer would be no. So that puts some of those property owners back into a quandary again. Mm-hmm. Well, the farmers, and they want to be able to sell their easement when money's available and when they feel like selling their easement. And then when the economy's better and prices go back up again and we're seeing development again, they might want to be in a different position. So the plan that Keith and I will be back to you with is to hold essentially to these lines. And your priority preservation area will match with your ag area. And we're providing for some flexibility for folks to change their mind, adjust to future changes, and to adjust that, and provide a process to change that. It's not locked in forever.
So we're going to have some of the towns come along and have issues with the poultry being allowed in the town transitionals.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What kind of suggestion would you have? And I don't think it's necessarily the town transitionals that they got the issue with. I think it's the distance from the city line, more so than the town. I don't think, I guess I'll correct myself. I might be wrong, but I don't think, say, Delmar's going to come in and say, we don't want poultry houses out on, I can't see the name of the road, but it's, the Delmar town transitional area is a large area.
Conley Mill Road is a
okay.
large ag area.
So I guess at some point in time, we're going to be faced with the towns, the small towns, saying we don't want the poultry houses, but so close. So as what, do we need to create another boundary as far as a footage type boundary around the towns? What would be?
You could do it a couple of ways. You can base it on the district itself, and I agree with you, Mr. Holloway. People don't know what the districts are or what that means. It would normally be a distance. So you've allowed, under the current poultry regulations, provisions to do poultry in those blank areas. If you set up distances,
Would we leave that up to the town?
no.
Okay.
No, that's your zoning. I mean, you certainly respect their opinions.
Right.
But in this idea that came up very, very, very much at the end, it was something that if you were to do, you need a very public process. You need us to evaluate, if you picked a certain distance, how much land does that involve? And how do those folks feel about that?
And I think the initiative.
People in the ag district using their property for ag purposes? Or do you just do it by special exception and protect it the way you did the residential areas?
Well, I mean, what would be interesting to see, because you said that the actual, the towns, their plan for growth is not the same as the town transition area, that it's smaller.
Smaller.
It would be interesting to see what those would be on a map like this for Willards, or Pittsville, I guess, doesn't have any. And, Mardella Springs, Sharptown, maybe that might be, if we go down this road, that area that they've actually chosen instead of this broad area the county just kind of said, there wasn't as much thought put into it. So that might be a narrower way to slice this up.
We can
Yeah,
compare
it'd be
those
interesting to compare.
and show you how those match up.
Yeah, I mean, and I have no idea how that would, but that would be an interesting way.
They are, they're not explicit.
Okay.
They're not explicit.
Hebron's the one exception to that. Hebron's growth area is larger than the town transition.
That's the corporate limits, isn't it?
The big piece, Waller Landing, the airport, the old airport farm, has been brought into the municipality.
Right. And of course, if you look at Mardella Springs, there's this twice the size of the Mardella Springs.
And they have no water and sewer system. And they have perhaps environmentally the most sensitive land surrounding them of all the towns.
But again, I mean, as what Mark, I think, was touching on is, the municipalities and the towns have their designated areas. Should that not be something that's reflected overall? But I think the quandary that we're in now is that the county's established these town transitional areas, and for us to then say, oh, yeah, we're going to reduce them to this size in concert with the municipalities, we have people
Yes.
who have already made very substantial decisions based on this current zoning, and we would be downzoning them.
Yes, sir.
Jack?
And we have to be very careful when we're downzoning anybody, because you're talking property values of citizens.
That was the commission's feeling in their recommendation too.
And then that does not only apply to residential areas, that applies to farmers trying to do something in their district.
Right.
And, if they come along and you downzone their area where they can't build a poultry house if they want to. So it works both ways there.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kramer, you got a question?
My question was answered. Thank you.
How about then, when we come back to you with that land use plan that we'll be presenting, we'll identify those areas. We'll do that analysis so you can see where those differences are.
Sure.
Is there any chance of speaking with Pittsville and trying to get them to nail down something kind of,
Because the state, they were sending people down to write the comp plans for you.
I know that if Tracy Gordy is watching us tonight, she is speaking very loudly to her TV set. Yes, they have tried.
Yeah.
They've reached out. And the communities too, they came up with money. I mean, there were grants at the time, but there was some matching money. They allocated money in their budget, they retained professionals.
can they identify, without doing a comp plan per se, like we're requesting them to do, our growth plan, I guess it's called, not a comp, can they just basically do a resolution, the town do a resolution identifying what they would think their growth area might be, or what they would like for the growth area to be?
They could do that as an advisory to you, but it would not meet the requirements of the state of Maryland. It's a comp plan change that has a process.
I see.
And there are certain calculations they have to do. And it really is important because at some day, that elusive food lion is going to show up on Route 50 outside of Pittsville. And everybody's going to want it, and they're not going to be able to come in. So they should be ready for that.
That's a good point. Any other questions? Jack, as usual, thank you so much for your input and your wisdom. And Keith Hall, we hope you feel better. Wish you the best.
And thank you to Joan Strang for staying with us all night.
Oh, absolutely.
She's the watcher of the watcher.
Joan keeps an eye on us.
She asked.
But what's your favorite, Joan, what's your favorite county?
My favorite
Yeah. Thank you.
That's because we're the best in the world, right?
Is Wicomico?
Good job.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
moved.
Second. All those in favor?
I bet when she says it, when she's at Whisper,
Means
she
adjourn.
says something different, right?